If you're wanting to run your own Minecraft server, this series will help you get set up. In the first video, we'll cover purchasing your first server and basic server setup. For the series, I'll be using Bisect Hosting, but I'll make it as generic as possible so you can follow along no matter who you're hosting with. You can scroll through on their website and have a look at some of their plans, and the longer you sign up for, the bigger the discount they offer. If the server is just for you and a couple of friends, then budget is probably fine. Anything beyond that, I'd look at a premium server. Just for this video, we'll select budget. I wouldn't recommend anything under 3 GB of RAM for a Java server. You can also select what software you want pre-installed, but we'll do this manually, so we'll skip this step. Then select where you want to host your server. This will be either the closest place to you or your players. Next, we'll have the option to select a dedicated IP address. If this server is just for you and friends, it's probably not needed, but if it's a community server, then I'd recommend getting that as well. Then, as mentioned previously, you have the option to change your billing cycle. It becomes a little bit cheaper through most hosts if you do that. And then they're just triple checking if you want your dedicated IP address. And for the mod pre-installation, we'll just leave this blank and do it ourselves. Automatic restarts help keep your server fresh, and they're recommended to do at least once a day. You can set the time you'd like your server to reboot. It's best to do this first thing in the morning depending on where your players are located. The time you select here is the local time zone for wherever your server is hosted. You also have the option for a second reboot, but we'll just leave it at 1 for now. Bisect will also send you some cool little stickers if you check this, and then click continue. Then you can click checkout and purchase the server. Once that's been purchased, you'll receive an email with some details on how to log into your server. Once you have those details, you can head to bisecthosting.com and log into the control panel. If you haven't logged in previously, you'll need to enter your username and password to see this screen. Next, we'll select our server, and then click Files. And this is a server backup I have here to use later in the video, otherwise this should be blank for you. Next, we need to decide on the software we want to use on our server. So you can use something like Paper, or PurPur, which is based on Paper and gives you a few little extra tweaks in the game. Links for both are in the video description. So once you've decided, make sure we have the latest version and we'll download the jar file. Then we'll jump back to the control panel, and under the Files tab, we'll click Upload, and we'll upload the jar file which we just downloaded. Once that's finished uploading, we'll take note of the file name for this jar file. And then under the Startup tab, we'll paste in the file name as we'll need this to boot our server. Then we'll click Home, and you can boot our server to download all the necessary files. Then head to the console, you can watch our server boot up. Once that's done, back in the Files tab, you'll see all the files we need for our server. Now that's complete, we can stop our server. Then back on the Files tab, we can delete the weld files that were created, as we want to do this again with our actual seed that we want to use. Then still on the Files tab, you'll see the server.properties file. This has a bunch of settings that we can change for our server. Things like a whitelist, the seed, game difficulty, and so on. But we won't change anything in here, as Bisect actually has a nicer way to do this. So under Config Files, and we'll open the Server Properties tab. So we'll start off by setting the message of the day for the server. This is what we'll show in the server list for our players. Next we have the server difficulty. This can be peaceful, easy, normal, or hard. Then to control who can connect to our server, we'll turn on the whitelist. And for that to work, we'll scroll down and enable Enforce Whitelist. If you have a specific seed you want to use, this is where you'll enter it. Then we'll set the level name. I'll use Shantek. After the next server reboot in the Files tab, then we'll have a Shantek, Shantek the end, and Shantek Nether folder. For spawn protection, I like to do this with other plugins, so I'll set that to 0. Then everything else you can leave as is, and it has been saving as we go. Then we'll click Home and start up the server. Then back on the console tab, we can watch the server boot up. Once that's finished booting up, we'll go back to the Home tab and we'll grab the IP address for our server so we can connect. Bisect will also offer a subdomain, which means you can use that address without the port. Then if we jump back into Minecraft, we can add the server, so we'll give it a name, and then we'll use the address that we copied from the Bisect Hosting website. So now we'll see that server in our server list, and if we try to connect, we'll see that we're not whitelisted. That's also really easy to fix, so back on the console, we'll type whitelist, add, and then our username. Then back in the game, we're able to connect to the server. Then back when we set up our server, we set up the automatic reboots. So if we head to the control panel and open up the schedules tab, you'll see your server reboots listed in here, but I've deleted mine to show you how to set them up from scratch. So we'll create a new schedule. We'll give it a name of reboot warning. And we'll set a time for it to go off. We'll have the reboot of the server at 3 AM. So we'll have this warning go off 1 minute before at 2:59. Then a few other options we have for this to only run when the server's online or if the server is empty, but we'll leave them as is. Then next we'll create another one for the daily reboot. And we'll set this to 3 AM. So these two schedules here are just empty at the moment with no task. So for the reboot warning, we'll open that up and we'll create a new task. We'll send a command. Say is going to send whatever we write after in game. So the players will see the server will be rebooting in 1 minute. Please log off now. Now you can keep adding individual tasks here with a delay between them. So you could have the second task with a 60-second delay and then reboot the server. But I just find it a bit easier to have individual schedules. So on the daily reboot schedule, we'll create a new task. For the action, we'll set it to send power action. And the payload will be restart the server. And as I mentioned previously, if you wanted to have multiple tasks under the one schedule, you could have an offset in time here. So if you had 60, it'd have 60-second delay between the two tasks. Then back onto all schedules, you'll see everything we've set up listed here. The last runtime will show correctly once it's run for the first time. Another thing you're able to customize is the server icon in the server list. To do so, we'll go back to the control panel and under the Files tab. And here we can upload the server icon file. This file will need to be 64 by 64 pixels and have the name server/icon.png. Once you have that file ready to go, back in the main directory for our server, we'll click Upload. Then we'll select our server icon.png file and upload it to the server. Then for that to show correctly, we'll need to reboot the server. We can easily do that under the console tab and click restart. Then back in game, you can see our updated icon. Then lastly, we'll want to set ourselves as a server admin to give ourselves a little bit more power. Back on the console, we can type op and then our name to set ourselves as an operator. We can also remove that power using deop and then the name. Just be mindful of who you set as a server operator because you can do a lot of damage to the server. So that's all the basic setup for our first server. In the rest of the series, we'll take a look at some of the more common plugins and how to set them up. If there is anything specific that you want to know more about, let me know in the comments.